Welcome to another episode of today's Conversations on Leadership, powered by Life University. I'm your host, Dr. Gilles LaMarche, and I'm thrilled to have with me in studio today one of my great friends, a 1985 Life University graduate who was telling me he's been in practice now 36 years right here in Marietta. But beyond your practice, Dr. Plasker, you have 3 children who all chose to become chiropractors. You've been involved with coaching hundreds, if not thousands, of chiropractors around the planet. And a number of years ago, you founded this company called the 100-Year Lifestyle to help people understand what it takes to live to that level. And I'm so glad and honored that you chose to join me in the studio today. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And like always, it's great to be with you. You're doing a great job. Life University is doing a great job leading the way in so many ways. And I'm just a proud alumni doing what I can, my part in this crazy world.
Well, I love what you're doing. And as you know, the impetus for having you was that you wrote this amazing article just a few weeks back. I had the opportunity to read it a couple weeks ago, and I thought, oh my gosh, we've got to get this information. And so even though the podcast is really focused on leadership, I really saw that as 2 aspects of leadership that I'd like you to talk about. One of them is leadership in healthcare, which you've been doing very well for more than 3 decades, and then leadership on communication, because we know there's a big rabbit hole as it relates to communication. And you were telling me some 30 plus hours writing the first draft of this article and some 60 hours bringing it to the context of what it is today. And it is a phenomenal article. So I'd like you to share the context of the article with the audience, why you did it, what you believe it's bringing to the world. And let's just talk about how you're choosing to lead, not only in your practice, where you take care of patients with your son, Corey, but also in the world in general and how you're helping other chiropractors around the planet.
Well, it's always been a passion of mine. I was very blessed in practice. I had great mentors, people that taught me about the importance of chiropractic care as a part of a lifestyle. So for me, it was never just about crisis care or feeling better in the moment or, getting better quicker than an aspirin. It was always about a lifestyle. And so, when I created the 100-Year Lifestyle, it was about communicating that, taking the chiropractic lifestyle, communicating it to the public in a way that they did not have to ask questions in what I call the crap box of miscommunication that is out there in the world. And there is a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication in the world. So when Masters of Health, they fell in love with what we were doing. We have been reaching millions of people for years now through the 100-Year Lifestyle. And they came to me and they said, we want you to write an article on the history of chiropractic. And I said, tell me why you want to write that article. And I had written for 20 months in a row, publishing in this publication. And they said, because the chiropractors understand what's going on in the world right now because they have overcome so much. They've been persecuted from way back since 1895. They have been so much misinformation, the lawsuit, and the public does not understand what's going on. And so I said, okay, well, that's a great story to tell. And it just so happens that in 2020, we were named essential healthcare providers, which is a big part of this bridge from our past to the present and the future. And so when we were named essential, it hit me. I get chills. I literally just got chills thinking about it again. That in 2020, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security named us essential healthcare providers.
Chiropractors as essential healthcare providers.
As essential healthcare workers. You ready? And here's this. You ready? And nobody knows. You didn't even know. You didn't.
No, I knew. I knew that it had been named, but
right.
What are we doing with that? I said, but nobody really knows.
Nobody knows, yeah.
Because it never hit mainstream news.
Well, because they're not going to tell them. We got it for a lot of reasons politically behind the scenes that were fantastic for us. But here's the thing. If it came in quietly and nobody knows, it can be taken away and nobody will know. And in my opinion, that would be the biggest crime for our generation of chiropractors to let that slide. And here's why. When you look at our history back in 1895, and the title of this article, the magazine again is Masters of Health. You can go to mastersofhealthmag.com. I was very honored. They made it the cover story and the cover feature of this magazine.
Let's have you reach over and let's just show it to our audience.
Well, it looks beautiful digitally, and here it is. I just printed it out. A lot of chiropractors are calling me up saying, we are handing this out like crazy. And the title of the article is The Chiropractic Journey from Persecuted to Essential. And if you go back and I got to say, this was a real team effort. So I have Sabina and Lady Carla from Masters of Health magazine. They helped do the research. My public relations director, Debbie, fantastic job doing the research. There's a lot of meat in this article. It's not surface, superficial. It's got a lot of depth to it.
Well, you know that the morning I read it, I immediately called you right after reading it. I mean, I was at my office. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And it had popped in my email box a few weeks before, but I was so busy I hadn't had time. So I'd actually calendared in to read it that particular day. So I was like, I've got to read this article and provide feedback, or at least, bring it all in. And I read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best article on chiropractic I have ever read. And of course, I called you. It was probably 6-ish a.m.
And you did, and I was up.
and that's where the conversation started about how do we bring this to more people? How do we bring this to everybody who's listening to today's conversation on leadership? How do we bring it to the entire profession and really spread it out so that as chiropractors, they can then spread that message and use that article and bring it to their people in their communities.
And how do we get it to our patients, which is a big part of this conversation. And one of the things that really inspired me when you called me, texted me that morning, I mean, I always admired your work, became good friends, met in Australia years ago, given a seminar, and you are a strong leader in this profession. And when you came out and you reached out to me and acknowledged it the way that you did, I said, you know what? We are really onto something here. When Stephanie Sullivan at Fall CE came up to me, oh my God, Eric, and gave me a really big hug, and she was grateful for the article, I said, wow, we're really onto something. And here's why we're onto something. In 1895, when D.D. Palmer gave that adjustment to Harvey Lillard, that was a time in history that if you really go back and look at what's happening back then, you had the germ theory, which was getting roots in the world through Louis Pasteur and others who were really pushing the germ theory. And then there were these other scientists that were pushing the terrain theory at the time. So that was this battle. It was a scientific battle, as much science as they could be doing in the day. They were going back and forth. And so the germ theory won because of political medicine getting on board. There were products that they could sell. You can't sell things to people necessarily on terrain. What are you going to tell them? Eat vegetables and sell more vegetables? You can't really package that up. And so D.D. Palmer at that time, his question that he asked, and we reframed, here's what the article does actually. It reframes our history from this context that we're talking about today, which we have never really had the opportunity to tell the public our history. It's always been told by others.
Absolutely agree.
We've told it to each other, we talk about it in class, but we've never really framed it for the world, and I really wanted to frame it for the world so they could see us in a brand new light. And so D.D. Palmer, we reframed his question, because it is true, as one of the original terrain theory pioneer questions. He asked, I wanted to know why two people sitting at the same table, eating the same food, breathing the same air, having the same genetics, one would get sick and one wouldn't. That is a terrain theory question. That's a host question. And so when he gave that first adjustment, he wasn't labeled at that time one of the terrain theory specialists and people. He was labeled a fishmongerer. He was labeled a magnetic healer. He was criticized for that, saying this guy has no business leading healthcare in the world. He was immediately attacked, like so many people today. Scientists and people doing real science in the world are being attacked today and marginalized as much as possible, losing credibility over nothing but great science, but having a different narrative than the status quo. And so when I look back at that, I really got kind of inspired about this article, because we are reliving a lot of those types of things today.
From 1895, absolutely agree.
And so when I started to study it and I realized what D.D. Palmer had to go through in 1907, political medicine started attacking chiropractors for practicing medicine without a license. And I love what D.D. said. He said, I am not in jail for a lack of principle, P-A-L, meaning I can't pay the bail. I am in jail for an abundance of principle, P-L-E. And again, getting chills. As we started to do the research for this article, I got pretty fired up because, 36 for me, years in practice. I know it's been at least that for you,
43
right?
For
43 for you. And so just watching that progression of history and seeing how it progressed into a point where the chiropractors being thrown in jail, and the statistic is staggering. 20,000, I believe the number is 20,000 prosecutions against chiropractors in our first 30 years. 20,000 prosecutions in our first 30 years, and many chiropractors multiple times being prosecuted. So from day one, from 1895, we have been prosecuted and persecuted, both.
Absolutely agree.
And so we go through our fight for licensure. It took 50, 60 years for all the states to get licensed, and so many battles along the way and trying to stay out of jail. And what was really interesting was, if you think about the time of, we didn't have, people ask, why didn't you guys have more research? That was one of the questions that comes up a lot, which I love what Life University is doing research. Maybe we'll get to that in a little while. And so here's the answer to that question. We spent the first 60 years of our professions trying to stay out of jail and get out of jail.
Just stay above water.
And stay above water, because the attacks, we never got a chance to get any footing in the world. And so that was a big issue, and that's the answer to that question. But we had something inside of us that happened because of all of that persecution. We became a profession of warriors and fighters, and we stood up for those principles. And I love it. There's a section of this article where I talk about our technique masters, who, if you think about the my technique is better than your technique wars that would go on amongst chiropractors. I mean, these are chiropractors that, like, you talk to any chiropractor, so what percentage of your people get better? Well, 90%. 80% get, like, immediately resolved almost, and 10% it takes a while, and then the other 10% could go either way. So 80 to 90% success rate is probably higher than that. And then you see our chiropractors just challenging it. Well, I do the Atlas, I do Logan Basic, I do Diversified, I do Gonstead, and they're arguing over like a 5% different or whatever percentage different, because everybody's getting staggering results. So the research that we were doing on the ground as technique masters, while also creating a culture, which I love, of wanting to serve people, helping sick people get well, understanding the vitalistic innate principles of the body and how it works for healing. And so these were roots that developed while all those challenges were going on. At the same time, we were becoming masters of health, like the name of this magazine, and masters in understanding the body with very minimal liability issues, real liability issues. People very rarely got hurt. And so I called chiropractic in this time period, and I don't know that it's been labeled this way, but it's important that we understand this part of it, that we were a grassroots movement.
Absolutely, we're grassroots movements. I mean, it started with DD, moved on to BJ, and the thousands and thousands of men and women who chose to become chiropractors. Because I'll tell you, I mean, I graduated in 1979. It sounds like a long time ago. And then when you compare it to 1895, which is when chiropractic started, you say, well, already 84 years. But I mean, I was vilified. I was persecuted. I mean, I was never prosecuted, but it always takes me back, though, to a quote that I love, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, from 19th century philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, who says, every great truth goes through three phases. First, it's ridiculed, then it's violently opposed, lastly, recognized as self-evident. And for those of us who were in practice, who had the opportunity and the honor to lay our hands on people, it's pretty self-evident, isn't it? But we were still vilified. People still laughed at who I was as a chiropractor. My kids were still told, oh, your dad's not even a real doctor. But the thousands and thousands of patients who came to my office, like the ones who go to your office, were so grateful that we were able to serve them the way we did.
Yeah, it's so true. And when you look at the people that have been leaders in healthcare today that are being vilified, who never went through that phase like we went through, they are literally have been decorated physicians and decorated scientists that are being vilified today the way that we were vilified. That's when it hit me. You know what? As fast as they labeled us this way is as fast as they could take it away. And like I say in the article, our patients have always known we were essential. We did not need the label.
Exactly.
But the fact that this label came from a third-party governmental agency, especially considering all the persecution and prosecution, it's a pretty significant thing. And, once we got licensed and we started to move forward, that was a big boost for us that we all started to get licensure. We started to get momentum. And then in 1963, when the AMA created a strategic plan to destroy the chiropractic industry, that went on from they spent billions in those dollars, those years' dollars.
To contain and
eliminate, to destroy, literally to destroy the chiropractic profession. Why? Because we did not want to be a part of that system. We wanted to be unique and distinct, which kudos to the founder of this university and the founding fathers of this university for taking that stand. And for BJ for taking that stand. Well, that's the other thing that Masters of Health, they said to me when they said, Dr. Plasker, listen, the chiropractors understand what's going on because they were attacked, but they didn't cave. The osteopaths caved and basically disappeared. The naturopaths caved and they basically disappeared, but the chiropractors didn't cave. And with what we're going through in the world today, we need to understand what it's going to take in this world to truly rise up. I love how you just did that with your hand. If you're watching that on the video, that was significant timing, to rise up and to raise everybody up. And she said to me, she said, the chiropractors are the leaders. The chiropractors are the leaders. And again, I got chills. And I said, wow. So there are people, this is not a chiropractic magazine. This is a magazine that goes to the public. And so I got pretty fired up about that too, because when you think about that lawsuit, that went on from 1963, the campaign, the slander came was 1963. In 1976, we filed the lawsuit. And all this
Our chiropractors from Illinois.
Correct. Dr. Wilk, right, and McAndrews, the lead attorney. That's all in the article. And your patients will love this article, by the way. Our patients are handing it out like crazy. They're sharing it like crazy. And so when you look at that, so it was 13 years of slander with no lawsuit. The lawsuit was filed in 1976. And then in 1987 is when it was settled. So that's 24 years of slander after 80 some odd years of persecution and prosecution. It's nearly a century of attacks. And what happened was, and here, I'm going to pull it up here just really quickly to say what the lawsuit said, because of what the judge said in the lawsuit. They said, evidence presented during the trial showed how the AMA and other defendants actively but covertly tried to undermine chiropractic educational institutions, hide evidence of the uses and benefits of chiropractic care, undercut insurance programs for potential patients of chiropractors, subvert government inquiries into the efficacy of chiropractic, and it was also found that they participated in a large-scale disinformation campaign to discredit the chiropractic profession, and we are seeing similar things happening in many ways today, disinformation and misinformation. You're hearing it all the time, not against us. We're essential now, but by people that talk about the immune system in the traditional way that science has shown that the immune system works. And so these words and this playbook, so to speak.
It's still active, isn't it?
It's still active, isn't it? Yeah, and so when you look at that, and so here it was 1987, and this is what I tell the students when I do the prospective student that Friday night at Life Leadership Weekend, which is such an honor to do. It's I think at the end of next year, it'll be somewhere around 50 that I've done on Friday night, and I love it. And why do I love it? Because it's a big difference maker to get these kids and their families to understand the importance of what chiropractic is really all about as it relates to longevity. We do it through a 100-year lifestyle context because longevity is an amazing bar and way to measure human potential and quality of life and longevity. Not just longevity, but quality of life and longevity. And so I will say to them, especially when the pandemic hit, that this is a significant time because in 1985, I graduated as a quack, and you're going to graduate essential. What are you going to do with that information? Do not let it make you soft. And I think that's a big part of today for our chiropractors, brothers and sisters, and our patients to understand we cannot be soft, not in this time, and we cannot let this essential go unnoticed and unheard because we have to put it out there so big that if anybody ever tried to take it away, there would literally be a rebellion.
Rebellion and a crisis.
And if nobody knows,
they could take
then
it away
nobody
and
would
nobody would ever know.
Yes. Like what's that? Dr. Scott has a great quote about the acorn and the oak tree, that it drops. And Dr. Scott, I can't quote you. You do it beautifully like a poet.
Because he actually recites the entire poem.
Yeah, and it is true, and we cannot let this
really,
go.
The value of the oak tree resides in the acorn.
Absolutely.
Right? The value of our profession currently definitely resides in the fact that we've been seen as being essential and named as being essential. We either allow that acorn to grow so that we can impact the healthcare of the world, or we allow the acorn to go unwatered and therefore never rise into a full oak tree.
because nobody else will water it except us and our patients. And so what is very important, and I love that, what you're saying, it's really, really true, and our patients are loving it. Because there are, one reason why we wrote the 100-Year Lifestyle is that we always wanted to reposition and reframe chiropractic out of a context into a new context, a fresh idea, so that we didn't have to get into arguments with people over, well, what is chiropractic? Well, my other chiropractor said it's this. Well, you say it's this, and my friend's chiropractor says it's this, and the sign on that chiropractic office says it's this. And so that argument to me is a complete waste of time.
It's mute.
Yeah,
It's mute.
so we just give people a new vision, 100-year lifestyle, and we say, hey, listen, you're probably going to live longer than you thought, whether you like it or not. It is indisputable. This is what it says in the article, too. It is indisputable in this moment in history and for decades. It is indisputable that a healthy spine and nervous system is essential for a healthy, long life, period. Everyone needs chiropractic care. Everyone can benefit from a chiropractic checkup from the time they are born through their last breath of life, whether they have symptoms or not. It's about optimizing the function of the nervous system, the brain, the communication between the brain and the body, and it's all in there. And the truth is we all see, and here's what's unique in this moment in history also, which is why I think it's so relevant today, is that we are seeing that the trust in the allopathic world is crumbling. The reports in all kinds of publications that the trust in the standard medical system is down 43%, 57%, 49%, and it's a staggering drop in trust in the status quo. But you've probably heard me say this from the stage many times, in that if medicine collapsed tomorrow, which is not our objective here, by the way, but just if it did, because they are in many ways collapsing, trying to find new footing to reinvent themselves, if medicine collapsed tomorrow, it would do nothing for the chiropractic industry if we did not change our story.
And our conversation.
And our conversation, right. If we did not change we're not changing our principles. We are just putting our principles in a context that is relevant to individuals, earthlings, I call them, human beings.
And that people understand the value, because I know when I quoted Arthur Schopenhauer, chiropractic is self-evident to us as chiropractors, but it's also self-evident to all the people that utilize chiropractic as part of their lifestyle choices. They go like, why would I ever want to live without chiropractic? And they can't convince other people, according to them, to actually, get on the same bandwagon. Sometimes I'm sure you have, families in your practice where the husband is in with the children, but the mother won't come. The mother's in with the kids and the father won't come because there's that, oh no, I don't believe in this. And I tell people, well, you don't really need to believe it. You need to experience it. And once you experience it and you experience the value that it brings you to that highest level of potential life, I would never want to live without chiropractic care.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's why this article has become so important for our patients, because we are helping the people that have grown up. Think about this now. So it's been over 100 years of misinformation and disinformation, and we have generations between the lawsuits, the slander campaigns from 1963 to 1987. This is grandma and great-grandma and their children and their grandchildren that maybe are growing up. I call them prehistoric beliefs. They're prehistoric chiropractic beliefs. But you don't have the time to change those people's beliefs. You're busy. I don't have the time. So how do we do it? And that's where content and that's where resources can have the conversations over dinner tables while you and I are not there. And I think that's a big part of what's become a life mission of mine, is that how do we get the world talking about us in a completely new conversation without compromising our principles, actually solidifying our principles when we're not around, with a new conversation, a new understanding, and a new light. And that's when we took our international best-selling books and we turned them into 100yearlifestyle.com and a network of doctors that are any technique, it doesn't matter. There used to be this expression, chiropractic first, drug second, surgery last. And I completely disagree with that statement. It should be chiropractic first, chiropractic second, different technique if necessary, chiropractic third, different technique and nutrition and fitness if necessary, chiropractic fourth with drugs when necessary, and chiropractic fifth with surgery when necessary. It is a lifetime care for everyone shift of conversation, and it's truth. It's the way people like you live. It's the way, I mean, I know your story of injuries and how you overcome it. You had allopathic care when you desperately needed it, and you also had chiropractic care at the same time. You have lived it. We have lived it. And so I think what's important for our generation, we cannot hold back our truth in this moment in time. And there was another thing happening way back in the early 1900s. There was a quote from a famous inventor, Thomas Edison. And we all know the quote, right? Go ahead, I'll let you have the honors. What's the quote?
You know what, I don't know it verbatim, so go ahead.
The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. This has been a conversation, right? This is a conversations on leadership. This has been a conversation that almost every chiropractor I know has had in their office, at a screening, at a lecture. They quote it all the time. And there's a funny story about it, because when I wrote the 100-Year Lifestyle, I found myself, this had never happened to me before, I found myself being severely misquoted. And people would come up to me and they would like attack me, like almost death threats sometimes. They'd say, Dr. Plasker, I can't believe you said that. I'm like, what are you talking about? I never said anything close to that, but I was being misquoted. So I found myself, I was in a training, and I was with our doctors that we work with regularly. And so we were talking about this quote. This quote came up by Thomas Edison, and then I stopped like right in the middle, and I thought to myself, I wonder if Tom actually said it, or if he was just misquoted by a chiropractor that was at a screening one day to get some patients, right? So I sent Sergio, God rest his soul. You remember Sergio, you met Sergio.
Well.
So he was my researcher at the time, and he went and he found out, he said, Dr. Plasker, he said it. I said, where and when? He said it on January 2nd, 1903, in a publication called the Newark Advocate, in a piece called The Edison Wizard. And at the time that I changed this quote, this was January 25th, 2010. And at first, I got really excited that he said it, because we weren't lying to the world, right?
Exactly. We're sharing the truth from a famous American inventor.
So I said to myself, first I got angry. I got excited, then I got mad. I said, why did I get mad? Because it was 107 years ago, and we were still living in the future. We're living in the future. No wonder we're never getting ahead, because we're constantly living
the present.
So I changed the quote. On October 25th, 2010, I changed the quote. And the new quote is, the doctor of the present will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame and diet and in the cause and prevention of dis-ease. Be present. And it's very interesting, Gilles, as a leader, you understand this, about the importance of personal conversations that you have with yourself, right? And what blew me away was that when I would say that quote, some people would get a lot of internal turmoil, because they've been living in the future for so long that when they said the doctor of the present, you mean, I've been saying live in the future. You mean if I say doctor of the present, I actually have to be that person?
Now I'm responsible for living it.
Yeah, and so it's been very exciting to put it out there. Now, it's been 12 years since I've been using this new quote, and people are starting to get it. And this whole shift from quack to essential, from the future to the present, to being labeled essential in a world where the other side is just crumbling in so many ways and trying to coerce people into doing things that they know is not right innately. And it's just a very interesting time in history. So something like this, an article like this, to position chiropractic, reframing it, our history, so that the people can talk about it in a new way based on the truth and the reality. And we're seeing prehistoric creatures, earthlings that had scared to death of chiropractors are coming in with their families, like out of just lining up for care. It's so exciting.
Well, and go, why didn't anybody tell me that before, right? So how can our listeners get this article again? Can you remind them? Because, I mean, I have a call out to all of you listening in. So whether you're a chiropractor listening in, or you're a patient of a chiropractor, or you're just someone who loves to understand more about leadership, once you know something, you can't unknow it. So I'm going to encourage all of you to get this article, read it, share the article, let people know. And if you are a chiropractor, take a bigger role in your ability to lead your community to great health. They're depending on you, aren't they?
Absolutely. And if you want to get the article, we'll put the link in this interview, I guess, because it's mastersofhealthmag.com, mag like magazine.com. But it was the cover story for October. In November, that URL that we just gave you is going to change. It's going to be the new November issue. So I have the URL. It's just too long for me to remember it. We'll put it in the link. You can email me at info at 100yearlifestyle.com. We'll send you the link. You can go to our social media pages, follow us on social media. We're going to be posting it there, the new link, so that everybody can have it. But here's the thing. Print them out. Give it out to patients. Tell your patients. Text it to your patients. Email it to your patients. Explain a little summary. In fact, if you email me, I'll give you a little summary that you can put in a text or an email if you want to send it out. And this is one of those, read it word for word.
Like, good information is essential to growth.
Yes.
But good information.
Yeah.
And that is really good information.
And you're doing a fantastic job, and Life University is doing a fantastic job. It's an honor to be a part of this great university as a volunteer, as somebody that I love it here. I'm blessed to be able to live close by.
It's a great family.
It's a great family, and
great things.
And we're just getting started.
And when I speak at different organizations, I say, the good news is principled chiropractic, as we know it, is alive and well at Life University.
Yes, it is.
We had the opportunity this past weekend to open a beautiful new clinic in San Juan, Puerto Rico, as well as a recruitment office. And tonight, after this, I'm actually back to the airport to fly to England and speak at the United Chiropractic Association convention. So all good. We're all doing great things. But like I said, again, listeners, please get this article. Read it cover to cover. Understand it. Start sharing it with your patients. Print it if you can. Send it electronically. Send them the link that you're going to get. But let's get this information out. I think you will all agree after reading the article that it is the best chiropractic article that I've ever read, and I think you might agree that it's the best chiropractic article that maybe you will have ever read. Well, thank you, Dr. Plasker, for taking the time to write it. Thank you for taking the time to be with me here today at Life University.
My pleasure.
To have you.
It's an honor. Thank you. And thank you, everybody.